with us from back home. I'm here with 3 of the participants from from around the world, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about 30 kilometers an hour. Last year in May, the UN Road Safety Week was focusing on 30 kilometers an hour speed reduction in communities around schools where people and children and communities are sharing the space. This caught a lot of tractions, and in a moment we will watch a movie. But before that, I would like our panel here to introduce themselves. Rafaela, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Rafaela Machado, Starting for Schools Program Coordinator at the International Road Assessment Program.
Thank you. Saul?
Hi, everyone. I'm Saul Billingsley with the FIA Foundation, and very happy to be joining you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ferry Smith. I work with the Royal Dutch Touring Club, AUWB, and I'm also chairing the FIA Policy Commission.
Thank you very much for being with us. To kickstart this discussion, we have asked our members about their experiences with 30 kilometers an hour, and we have a short movie to show you from a couple of countries around the world. Please take it away.
We thought we would be able to achieve 30K in 2 cities, but there's been a domino effect, and 30 cities are considering lower speeds. So 200 lives can be saved in Argentina this year.
So now that the cities come in and lowered the speed limit and introduced the traffic calming, it's a place that I like to ride with my kids now. And it's a route that my kids can take to get to school safely.
My state of Punjab has introduced and notified new and safe speed of 25 kilometers around school to secure the life of children.
This intervention led to perceived safety for all road users, and especially for the pupils who benefit from a safer road home.
Hình như là ở dạo gần đây hay sao á, thì mình đi qua cái đường này thì mình thấy có cái biển giảm tốc độ 30 km/h, thì mình thấy là cái yêu cầu này cũng khá là đúng đắn và tốt đấy. Thì khi mà học sinh đi học hoặc học sinh đi về á, thì rất là đông, mà nếu mà tốc độ phương tiện giao thông qua đây cao á, thì sẽ rất là nguy hiểm cho các em.
The 30 km speed limit was implemented in Zambia in 2019 in 4 cities. This was introduced in order to lower speeds in school zones and urban areas. This has reduced carbon emissions and increased the number of people walking and cycling.
Thank you very much to our members for sharing what 30 kilometers an hour in their community have led to. I'd like to ask you, there was clearly a lot of reasons and and advantages of introducing 30 kilometers an hour. Maybe we hear a little bit more about some of the advantages from you. Rafaela, will you start?
Yeah, sure. So to start the discussion, implementing 30 kilometers per hour is actually one of the most powerful tools we have to make sure that the streets will be made safer. So by implementing these speed limits and making sure that drivers will respect the speed limits, this is crucial to make sure that kids going to school or any vulnerable road users might be able to arrive to their destination safely.
Yeah, great. And so there's also other areas that 30 kilometers an hour are impacting and benefiting. Could you share a little bit around that?
Yeah, I think having 30 kilometer an hour zones, particularly in urban areas, can be a real enabler for a whole bunch of other things. So if you have low speed traffic combined with decent infrastructure, it will enable walking and cycling, all the things that we've heard, but it will also encourage low emission zones, reduced car use, increased bike use. It's been shown to increase footfall, which is good for local businesses. It's good for exercise. It's good for mental health. There's a whole bunch of things for which this is a key which unlocks a lot of public health benefits.
Yeah. And Ferry, do you have anything to add? You have been very active with the clubs, the FIA clubs, in pushing for speed reduction. What have been your experiences around this?
Yeah, of course, 30 kilometers per hour is a huge contribution to road safety because speed can kill. And we have to be aware that speed reduction will help a lot. Nevertheless, there's, of course, also a different sound to it because not only the clubs have a road safety issue, but they also found their basis in motoring. And it's not always easy to convince motoring clubs that we have to reduce speed. But we strongly advise that we think about it, that we do it, that we work on it, especially because in the COVID pandemic, a lot of people decided to walk and to cycle. There's a strong reason to lower the speed in cities. Apart from that, we have a number of new modalities coming onto the market. Light electric vehicles, and well, mixing them with 50 km/h traffic isn't that really that good. At the end of the day, I think we have to think about redesigning city space again to adapt to this new situation and to show that also all those different modes of transportation find their way in a safe place.
Yeah. And clearly some of our NGOs who are working in the communities have experienced some resistance in the implementation. Have you experienced the resistance when you have worked on pushing for lower speed? What?
Yeah, I think most of the challenges that we face on implementing these safe speeds are related to myths or misconceptions on different impacts of consequences of reducing the speed limit. So there are some misconceptions on increasing travel time and other elements that are not well understood. So I think this, when we provide communities, we provide people the right information, this is something that supports a lot the process. This is why it's so important to make sure that we are going to use data to support these interventions, because then it becomes a very powerful way of moving forward with these policies.
Yeah. So what resistance, how do you work with that?
I think we did some polling around the world a couple of years ago, just before COVID. And we polled in about 10 countries, decent sized samples. I found overwhelming support for low speed zones, mostly around schools. That's the highest support, but generally as well. I mean, I think, in terms of low speeds, but also some traffic restrictions, some traffic calming, that kind of thing, a lot of support across the board. I think you're always going to get people who oppose it, who are very vocal. Mm-hmm. But the polling time after time after time bears out that once you do these things, they're popular, and they're popular with a lot of motorists too, I think, because motorists are also parents, they're also cyclists and walkers, and they want to live in a safe and pleasant environment too. So, all of us jump in a car and blame everybody else for the traffic jam, but equally all of us can get out of the car and help each other to benefit from the locality we live in and work in and walk in, being safe and healthy and happier.
Yeah. And you mentioned some resistance in your own group. How did you overcome that?
Well, 30 as a default was the discussion actually, and they said, as already been stated, try to begin with school zones, try to build acceptance, and we got some reactions from different worlds as well. Public transport, for instance, bus services, who said, well, I have to meet a timetable. How do we do that? The city has to be accessible also for delivery vans, and they are also time restricted. So we have to find smart solutions for that. And it doesn't mean that we can't go to 30 kilometers an hour, but we have to redesign the traffic flow in the city so that every single citizen, but also the visitors of the city, can do their thing and not feel threatened by lowering the speed.
Yeah. So we just briefly here talked about community demand and sort of building the community demand. We're here in Leipzig. We're here at a big conference with a lot of important people, very decision makers, practitioners. What is it that we can do here? We are here, if we are here on behalf of the NGOs around the world who's actually been out there trying and pushing and creating that community demand. What is it that our task being here in Leipzig is, and how can we move forward?
Yeah, so it's crucial, this work that the Alliance and the NGOs have been doing with advocating for the safe speed limits. And in general, we have a lot of different tools available, a lot of resources that can support this process of encouraging the implementation of these measures and also making sure that streets will be designed safely. So this is a great opportunity to make sure that we will adopt and implement these solutions that are known, are effective, to make sure that we'll provide 5-star cities to everyone as part of the Vision Zero efforts that we want to make sure that will move forward.
So some of your advice, how do we engage the people who are here?
Sure. Well, Lottie, you've done it already because you were speaking to dozens of transport ministers this morning in their closed session. But I think for all of us, it's really just about getting the word out, demonstrating success, showing how it does work, overcoming some of the myths. I think the fact that this week we've got a Streets for Life, Commit to Act, Week of Action is really great because it renews some of that momentum we had last year in the UN Global Road Safety Week. And I was really impressed with how many organizations, NGOs, members of the NGO Alliance, but others as well, FIA clubs, got involved in the Streets for Life campaign and have stayed involved and sort of not just talking about it, but doing practical action. And I think it's through that practical action, engaging and supporting and helping local communities that we're really going to see this shift. We can talk about that here in Leipzig and try and get some of the ministers to accept it and understand it, but the real work has to happen at community level.
Yeah. And how do we share that real work? What is your take on that?
Well, if we want to build livable cities are carbon-free cities, are accessible cities. So we have to transfer to a different mode of transportation. Make those the different modes of transportation, a real alternative for people, so that they really can accept the way that it's changing. We have to tell the story. The narrative should be right, and we over and over have to explain and to have the right arguments to convince people what they should do. And what I said earlier, and that's I think really, really important, if we really want to change the inner city mobility, we have to think about redesigning public space.
Just a second. I think it's a bell for something. Yeah, sorry, it was interrupting you. Sorry.
No, not what I said was redesign public space, because that's important. Space becomes more and more scarce. So cars in the city is not the best idea for the future. We really have to adopt to the idea that walking, cycling and light electric modes of transportation are the future. But it is a hell of a lot of work. So people and actually the ministers should make that happen in their country.
I think you have seen how hard our NGOs are working and how they're also showcasing the effects and sort of some of the responses they hear from the community. That was clear in the videos that we saw here, that there was a lot of benefits stated. There was a lot of good things coming out of 30. So what do you think they want to say to us? We're here in Leipzig. We're here with the practitioners. We're here sort of able to move this forward. They're doing the work on the ground. What do you think they would ask us to do, and how do we do that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure these dialogues will include making sure that these demands of listening to the communities is heard and implemented, and also making sure that these different interventions that we are describing can also be implemented by different governments, and these commitments at the national level as well to scale up the solutions and make sure that we have it spread in different regions is also very important. Yeah.
So do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about practical action, and it's impressive to see what a lot of the NGO community have been doing. We're helping a bit with the FI Foundation with a bit of funding to help sort of encourage through our advocacy hub to get local action to happen. We have global tools like IRAP, and all three of us are involved in IRAP. We should make that clear, which can also be exploited and deployed and are really helping to change ministers' minds. So I was sitting on a panel with the minister from Colombia this morning and chatting to her about IRAP, and she's really impressed with what's happening there at sort of a highway level, but also at a local level. It can really be deployed. So I think we have a lot of tools. What we need to do is get the message across to ministers, to policymakers. And I think it's really important as well to put this in perspective. It's only been 100 years that cars have started to dominate our cities. Before that, they weren't around. And, it's very easy to take that 100 years and see it as a slice of history and to then go back and remodel for the next 100 years, which I think is what Ferry is saying. In the center of cities, cars, probably don't really have that much of a place if we have good public transportation, if we have micro-mobility, if we have decent walking and cycling options. Outside the cities, it's a different story. So we need to be pushing that message, that a positive message. It's not all sort of anti-car, cars are bad, because people like their cars and they're car dependent. It's about giving them alternatives, pushing those alternatives, making people see that they can get out of their cars, and when they're in their cars, they should be driving more slowly.
Well, there are a couple of things we should work on, I should work on, especially to have the narrative to the clubs, because we have to support them and give them the arguments to use to the local governments. I think we also have to think about the transition period, because the transition period is important. In that transition period, maybe we could go step by step and get an approach where we say these zones are most likely to succeed in transferring to 30. And as Sol already said, we have to make work of these alternatives, because alternatives is the key to inner city mobility for the future. I would say to the ministers, please think about what you can do. It's a good measure to start off with. It's a good measure for a lot of goals you have on sustainability, on road safety. So let's go to action, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah. So this whole 30 speed reduction is nothing new for us. It's a core of this safe system. And 30 kilometers an hour was sort of the tagline that we used in the UN Road Safety Week last. Sorry, just a second. And 30 kilometers an hour was what we used as a tagline. And I think one of the things we found was that even though it was very provocative for some communities, it at least started a dialogue. It got some reaction, and that has been very helpful in getting this on the agenda. Just to finalize this, this week here is the week of action. And Streets for Life is the tagline for that. What does Street for Life look like for you?
Yeah, Street for Life makes sure that all of the road users, particularly the most vulnerable ones, will be able to walk safely, to go to their destination safely, and will be able to explore and enjoy the city. Yeah.
I think Streets for Life, you say it's provocative. It shouldn't be provocative. If you think about it at its core, a Street for Life is about a street where a child can walk somewhere without getting hit by a fast piece of metal driven by an adult. And that's the sort of the moral argument at the core of this. Anyone who disagrees with that really needs to have a good sharp look at themselves, because that is what we're talking about ultimately. So for me, a Street for Life, it's about justice, it's about climate, it's about children, and it's about sort of rebalancing our cities so that everyone has a fair share of the space. And I think that's a fair and a positive message that we should be sending out.
Yeah, Streets for Life is life in itself, because streets bring you from A to B. They're part of the system, the transportation, the mobility system. So we can't separate it from the rest of things which are happening. So we have to adapt to the new modes of transportation and be able, as Rafaela already said, to join the space, and especially for the vulnerable road users, they should come from A to B in a safe way, because everyone deserves to come home safely.
I would like to conclude with saying thank you very much to you. Thank you very much for helping us out to give a little bit more perspective to the hard work that the NGOs are doing in the communities. Thank you very much to Ferry, to Sol, and to Rafi. And thank you very much to all of you who have watched and listened. This was a short little input from Leipzig, live from Leipzig. Thank you very much.
Twitter storm.
Oh. Yeah. Ooh.
Based on research and data, going towards intervention, okay, and then towards policy change.
We demand a lower speed on the streets Why? Because this is the most effective way. I demand there must be investment in road safety.
I call my government to invest more and to allow more budget and funds to road safety that can really save lives and then can really, how can I say, increase our economy.
Otherwise, we cannot achieve our goal that 50% reduction of death by 2030.
We want NGOs to be in the decision making.
Those must develop a channel of communication because we are the bridge between people, society, and governments.
Without engaging local communities, NGOs, we cannot really plan safe streets.